The rain hammered against the kitchen window of the small diner as Claire Mitchell wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time that evening. Her hands were red and raw from the hot water, and her feet ached in the worn sneakers she'd been wearing for 2 years. At 32, she felt decades older, carrying the weight of responsibility that came with raising a 7-year-old daughter alone, while working double shifts at Murphy's Diner on the outskirts of Denver. "Table 6 needs a refill, Claire!" shouted Murphy from the kitchen, his gruff voice cutting through the clatter of dishes. She grabbed the coffee pot and headed toward the booth where a businessman sat hunched over his laptop, oblivious to the world around him. As she poured, her mind wandered to the stack of bills waiting at home. The rent notice marked final, the medical bills from when her daughter Haley had the flu last month, and the car repair estimate she couldn't afford. Claire had once dreamed of opening her own restaurant. She'd attended culinary school for 2 semesters before her ex-husband Derek gambled away their savings and disappeared, leaving her pregnant and alone. Those dreams felt like they belonged to someone else now, a different woman who believed in possibilities. These days, she measured success by whether she could put dinner on the table and keep the lights on. "Mom's gonna be late again," she'd texted her neighbor Mrs. Chen earlier, the elderly woman who watched Haley after school for whatever Claire could spare. The guilt gnawed at her constantly, missing school plays, homework time, bedtime stories. But what choice did she have? Single mothers didn't get the luxury of choosing between being present and keeping their children fed. The evening shift dragged on until nearly midnight. As Claire locked up the diner, Murphy handed her an envelope. "Extra $20, he said gruffly, avoiding her eyes. "You've been working hard." She wanted to hug him, but settled for a quiet thank you instead, blinking back tears. $20 meant Haley could have fresh fruit this week instead of just canned vegetables. The bus ride home took 40 minutes, winding through neighborhoods that grew progressively shabbier. Claire pressed her forehead against the cold window, watching the city lights blur into streaks. She thought about her mother's words before she'd passed away 3 years ago. "You're stronger than you know, sweetheart. Sometimes we have to walk through fire to find our purpose." At the time, Claire hadn't understood. Now, she felt like she'd been walking through flames for years with no end in sight. When she finally climbed the 3 flights of stairs to their tiny apartment, she found Haley asleep on the couch, still in her school clothes. Mrs. Chen sat in the armchair, knitting needles clicking softly. "She tried to wait up for you," the older woman whispered. "Made you a drawing. It's on the fridge." After Mrs. Chen left, Claire carried Haley to bed and looked at the drawing. A crayon picture of 2 figures holding hands with "My mom is the best cook in the world" written across the top in shaky letters. Something cracked open in Claire's chest. A mixture of love and desperation so intense, it nearly brought her to her knees. The next morning arrived too soon. Claire dropped Haley at school and headed to her second job, cleaning offices in the financial district downtown. It was mindless work that paid cash under the table, but she needed every penny. As she pushed her cart of cleaning supplies through the marble lobby of the Sterling Tower, she couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between this world and hers. Men in $1,000 suits strode past without seeing her, their phones pressed to their ears, discussing deals worth more money than she'd see in a lifetime. She was scrubbing the floor of a corner office on the 42nd floor when she heard voices in the hallway. "Mr. Sterling wants this space cleared by Friday," someone said urgently. "The charity gala is Saturday night and everything needs to be perfect. He's personally overseeing every detail." Claire had heard of Marcus Sterling. Everyone in Denver had. The 38-year-old billionaire had built a tech empire from nothing, or so the stories went. His face appeared regularly in business magazines and society pages, always serious, always composed. They called him the Ice King because he never smiled in photographs and had a reputation for ruthless business decisions. She finished the office and was heading to the supply closet when disaster struck. Her cart caught on something, tipping forward and sending cleaning solution splashing across the marble floor. Claire lunged to catch it but slipped, landing hard on her hip. The crash echoed through the empty hallway like a gunshot. "What's going on out here?" A deep voice cut through her embarrassment. Claire looked up to see a tall man in an impeccably tailored navy suit standing in a nearby doorway. Even without the expensive clothes, he would have been striking. Dark hair touched with silver at the temples, sharp cheekbones, and eyes the color of storm clouds. Those eyes were currently fixed on her with an expression somewhere between concern and annoyance. "I'm so sorry, sir. I'll clean this up right away." Claire scrambled to her feet, ignoring the pain shooting through her hip. Her hands shook as she reached for the spilled bottles. "Are you hurt?" The man stepped closer, and Claire recognized him from the magazine covers. Marcus Sterling. In person, he was somehow more intimidating than his photographs suggested, radiating an intensity that made the air feel charged. "I'm fine. Really. This won't happen again." She couldn't afford to lose this job. Couldn't afford anything going wrong. Marcus studied her for a moment longer than comfortable, his gaze taking in her cheap uniform and worn shoes. "You're Claire Mitchell," he said, and her head snapped up in surprise. "I saw your name on the cleaning crew roster. You also work at Murphy's Diner." Heat flooded her cheeks. Of course he knew. Men like him knew everything about everyone in their buildings, even the invisible people like her. "Yes, sir. I work 2 jobs." She didn't mention the occasional weekend catering gigs, or the baked goods she sold to neighbors. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford, but she didn't need to advertise her desperation either. "Why?" The question caught her off guard. "I have a daughter to support." The words came out sharper than intended. Defensive. Something shifted in Marcus Sterling's expression, a crack in the ice that disappeared so quickly she might have imagined it. He pulled out a business card and held it out to her. "My executive assistant is leaving to have a baby. I need someone to manage my personal appointments, coordinate household staff, and handle various administrative tasks. The position includes organizing business dinners and social events. I've noticed your work ethic. You're here every morning at 5, never miss a day, and the offices you clean are immaculate. That kind of reliability is rare." Claire stared at the card like it might explode. "Sir, I don't have experience with... The job pays $90,000 a year with full benefits and reasonable hours. You'd work from my home office mostly, which I assume would help with your childcare situation." He named a salary that was more than triple what she currently made from both jobs combined. "If you're interested, come to this address tomorrow at 9 a.m. for an interview." Before she could respond, he turned and walked back into his office, closing the door with a soft click. Claire stood alone in the hallway, the business card trembling in her hand, feeling like reality had just tilted on its axis. Men like Marcus Sterling didn't offer opportunities like this to women like her. There had to be a catch, but as she thought of Haley's drawing on the refrigerator and the stack of unpaid bills, she knew she'd be at that address tomorrow morning, even if it turned out to be too good to be true. What Claire didn't know was that Marcus Sterling had been watching her for weeks, recognizing something in her determined exhaustion that reminded him of his own mother, a woman who'd worked 3 jobs to keep him in school after his father abandoned them. And he hadn't told her the full truth about why his assistant was really leaving, or what had happened in his life that made him suddenly desperate for someone trustworthy in his home. Some secrets, he'd learned, were best revealed slowly. Block 2. Claire stood outside the iron gates of Marcus Sterling's estate in Cherry Hills Village, checking the address on the business card for the 3rd time. The mansion beyond looked like something from a movie, all stone and glass, with manicured lawns that probably cost more to maintain than her yearly rent. She'd borrowed a blazer from Mrs. Chen and paired it with her only dress pants, hoping she looked professional enough for whatever this interview entailed. A voice crackled through the intercom. "Name, please?" "Claire Mitchell. I have a 9 o'clock appointment with Mr. Sterling." The gates swung open silently, and Claire walked up the long driveway, her stomach churning with nerves. She'd barely slept, alternating between excitement and suspicion. Why would a billionaire personally recruit someone from a cleaning crew? The rational part of her brain screamed that this was some kind of setup, but desperation had a way of drowning out reason. A stern-looking woman in her 50s answered the door. "I'm Patricia, the head housekeeper. Mr. Sterling is expecting you in his study. Follow me." She led Claire through rooms that seemed designed to intimidate, high ceilings, expensive art, furniture that probably cost more than a car. Everything was pristine, cold, beautiful, in an untouchable way. Marcus Sterling stood by a massive window overlooking the grounds, phone pressed to his ear. He gestured for Claire to sit, finishing his conversation with clipped efficiency. "I don't care what the board thinks, Gerald. The acquisition happens on my terms, or not at all." He ended the call and turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "You came. You offered me a job interview, sir. Of course I came." Most people would have assumed it was some kind of joke. A billionaire doesn't typically recruit administrative staff from cleaning crews. He sat across from her, those storm-gray eyes studying her intently. "Why did you believe it was real?" Claire met his gaze directly. "Because I need it to be real. Because my daughter deserves better than what I can currently provide. And because you don't strike me as someone who wastes time on jokes." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Fair assessment. Let me be frank, Ms. Mitchell. I need someone I can trust in my home. My last 3 assistants were more interested in selling stories to tabloids or positioning themselves for other opportunities." The distaste in his voice was evident. "You have a daughter, responsibilities, no social media presence that I could find, and a work ethic that suggests you value stability over excitement. That makes you ideal for this position. What exactly would the position entail?" Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Managing my personal calendar, coordinating with household staff, handling correspondence, organizing dinners and events I host here. I entertain frequently for business purposes. Investors, board members, potential partners. The role requires discretion, organization, and the ability to manage multiple tasks simultaneously." He paused. "I also have a son. Dylan is 8 years old and lives with me full-time. His mother..." Another pause, longer this time. "She's not in the picture. He attends private school during the day, but someone needs to be here when he comes home. My current arrangement isn't working." This new information shifted something in Claire's understanding. Marcus Sterling wasn't just a ruthless billionaire. He was a single father, just like she was a single mother. "I'd need to bring my daughter with me sometimes. After school, maybe during summer." "That's acceptable. Dylan could use the company of other children." Marcus pulled out a folder. "This is the contract. Standard non-disclosure agreement. Salary and benefits we discussed. 3-month probationary period. I expect loyalty, discretion, and excellence. In return, I offer job security, fair compensation, and respect for your time with your daughter. I don't believe in making people choose between their children and their careers." Claire read through the contract carefully, her heart pounding. It seemed straightforward, almost too generous. Health insurance, dental, vision, paid time off, even a college fund contribution for Haley. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked quietly. "There are professional staffing agencies full of qualified people." Marcus was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant. "My mother worked herself to death trying to give me opportunities. 3 jobs, no health insurance, sleeping 4 hours a night. She had a heart attack in a grocery store when I was 16. I found her when I came home from school." His voice was flat, carefully controlled. "I built this empire in her memory. But recently I've realized I'm failing the one person who actually depends on me now. Dylan barely knows me. I work 18-hour days, travel constantly, and when I'm home I'm distracted. He needs stability, and I need someone who understands what it means to put a child first." The raw honesty caught Claire off guard. Behind the Ice King facade was someone carrying his own weight of guilt and loss. "I'm sorry about your mother." "Don't be sorry. Just be honest with me. Can you do this job?" Claire thought about her skills, the organizational abilities she'd developed juggling multiple jobs, the cooking talent she'd honed in culinary school and refined through years of necessity, the emotional intelligence required to navigate difficult customers and demanding bosses. "I don't have much to offer, sir. No fancy degree, no corporate experience, but I can cook, I can organize, I can manage chaos, and I know how to make a house feel like a home instead of just a showpiece. If that's what you need, then yes, I can do this job." Marcus extended his hand. "Then welcome to the team, Ms. Mitchell. You start Monday." The next few days passed in a blur. Claire gave notice at both her jobs, ignoring Murphy's knowing smile and the cleaning supervisor's stunned expression. She bought Haley new school clothes with the advance Marcus had insisted on providing, and tried to explain the new situation to her daughter without revealing her own uncertainty about whether this was really happening. Monday morning arrived cold and bright. Claire dropped Haley at school and drove to the Sterling estate, still half convinced she'd arrived to find the gates locked and the whole thing revealed as an elaborate dream. But Patricia answered the door with the same stern expression, leading her to a well-appointed office adjacent to Marcus's study. Mr. Sterling left instructions for your first week. Familiarize yourself with his calendar, coordinate with the chef about this weekend's dinner party, and review the household staff schedules. Patricia handed her a tablet loaded with information. He's in meetings downtown until 3. Dylan gets home at 4:15. Mrs. Wallace usually manages him, but she called in sick today. You'll need to handle pickup. The morning disappeared into spreadsheets and phone calls. Claire discovered that running a billionaire's household was like conducting an orchestra. Every moving part had to sync perfectly, or the whole operation fell apart. The dinner party guest list alone required 3 hours of cross-referencing dietary restrictions, seating arrangements based on business relationships, and coordinating with the chef about menu options. At 4 o'clock, Claire drove to Dylan's private school in Marcus's guest car, a luxury sedan that made her nervous to even touch. She waited with the other parents and nannies, feeling distinctly out of place in her borrowed professional clothes. When Dylan emerged, she recognized him immediately. He had his father's dark hair and serious expression, but his eyes were different, lighter, sadder, older than 8 years should allow. "You're not Mrs. Wallace," he said flatly, climbing into the back seat. "I'm Claire. I'm your dad's new assistant. Mrs. Wallace is sick today, so I'm picking you up." They all leave eventually. Dylan stared out the window, his voice matter of fact. "Dad hires people. They pretend to care. Then they quit or get fired. Are you going to pretend too?" The question pierced through Claire's professional composure. She pulled the car over and turned to face him. "Dylan, I'm not going to pretend anything with you. I'm here because I need this job to take care of my daughter. Your dad hired me because he thinks I can help make things run better here. Whether we become friends or just tolerate each other is up to both of us. But I promise I won't lie to you." Something shifted in Dylan's expression, a crack in his own defensive armor. "You have a daughter? Her name is Haley. She's 7. She likes drawing and asking impossible questions, and eating cereal for dinner when I'm too tired to cook. My dad never has time for dinner. Mrs. Wallace makes it, but then I eat alone while he works." The loneliness in those words was crushing. "Well," Claire said carefully, "maybe we can change that. I'm a pretty good cook, and I have strong opinions about families eating together." For the first time, Dylan almost smiled. "Dad says you used to work at a diner. Murphy's. Best mediocre coffee in Denver." She started the car again. "Hey, what's your favorite food?" "Pizza, but like, really good pizza. Not the frozen kind. What if I told you I know how to make pizza dough from scratch? The real Italian way, with the crust that's crispy on the outside and soft on the inside?" Dylan's eyes widened. "Really?" "Really. And if your dad agrees, maybe we could make some together this week. You, me, and Haley. Consider it a getting-to-know-you activity." When they arrived home, Marcus was already there, which Patricia indicated was unusual. He stood in the foyer, still in his suit, tension evident in his shoulders. "Dylan, how was school?" "Fine." Dylan headed for the stairs, then paused. "Claire says she can make real pizza. Can we do that sometime?" Marcus looked between his son and Claire, surprise flickering across his features. "If Ms. Mitchell is willing, I don't see why not." After Dylan disappeared upstairs, Marcus turned to Claire. "What did you do?" "Talk to him like a person instead of an obligation. He's lonely, Mr. Sterling. He needs more than staff managing him. He needs connection." She held his gaze. "And if I'm being honest, so do you." The words hung in the air between them, bold and possibly inappropriate. Claire held her breath, waiting for him to fire her on the spot. Instead, Marcus did something she hadn't expected. He laughed, a short, surprised sound that transformed his entire face. "3 days ago, you were cleaning my offices. Now you're lecturing me about parenting? You hired me to help manage your household. Dylan is part of that household. And I know what it's like to be stretched so thin you forget what matters most." Claire softened her tone. "I'm not judging you, sir. I'm offering to help, if you'll let me." Marcus studied her for a long moment, and Claire saw the moment he made some internal decision. Friday night. Homemade pizza. You, me, Dylan, and your daughter. Consider it your first official test. Can you handle coordinating a family dinner in addition to everything else? Challenge accepted. As Claire gathered her things to pick up Haley from Mrs. Chen's, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. Not the desperate, clinging to survival kind, but real hope that maybe, just maybe, life was about to change for the better. What she didn't know was that Marcus Sterling stood at his study window watching her drive away, wondering why this woman with her borrowed blazer and unflinching honesty had unsettled him more in 3 days than anyone had in years, and why the thought of Friday's dinner filled him with something dangerously close to anticipation. Friday evening arrived with unexpected sunshine breaking through Denver's typical November gloom. Claire had spent the afternoon preparing ingredients, her hands moving through familiar motions that calmed her nerves. Making pizza dough was muscle memory from her culinary school days, but cooking in Marcus Sterling's state-of-the-art kitchen while he watched felt entirely different from flipping burgers at Murphy's. Haley sat at the massive kitchen island, swinging her legs and chattering to Dylan about her favorite cartoon. To Claire's relief, the two children had bonded quickly during the week's after-school overlap. Dylan had been teaching Haley chess, while she'd introduced him to her collection of adventure books. Watching them together made Claire's chest tight with emotions she couldn't quite name. "So we just punch the dough?" Dylan asked skeptically, eyeing the risen ball of dough on the counter. "It's called kneading, but punching works too," Claire demonstrated, her hands pressing and folding the elastic dough. "You're working the gluten, making it stretchy so it can hold all the toppings without tearing. Wanna try?" Dylan approached cautiously, plunging his small fists into the dough. His serious expression cracked into genuine laughter when it squished between his fingers. "This is weird. Let me try." Haley climbed onto a step stool, and soon both children were giggling as they took turns attacking the dough with enthusiasm if not technique. Marcus leaned against the doorframe watching the scene, still in his dress shirt, though he'd removed his tie and rolled up his sleeves. Claire had noticed him doing that all week, hovering at the edges of domestic moments like he didn't quite know how to enter them. She'd also noticed other things. The way his jaw tightened when Dylan's school called about a playground incident, how he absently rubbed his temples during conference calls, the late nights when his study light remained on long after everyone else had gone to bed. "Mr. Sterling, you're not exempt from kitchen duty," Claire said, gesturing him over. "Come teach your son the proper way to toss pizza dough." "I don't know how to toss pizza dough." "Then you'll learn together. That's the point." She handed him a portion of dough, their fingers brushing briefly. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her that she quickly suppressed. This was her employer. A billionaire. Someone so far outside her world they might as well be different species. But as Marcus stood next to Dylan, attempting to spin the dough with comically terrible results, Claire saw something else. A man trying to connect with his son but unsure how. Wealth and power irrelevant in the face of parenthood's universal challenges. "Dad, you're doing it wrong." Dylan laughed as dough stuck to Marcus's hands. "Clearly, I should stick to corporate acquisitions." But Marcus was smiling, really smiling, and the transformation was startling. The Ice King melted, revealing someone younger, more vulnerable, almost handsome in a way the society page photographs never captured. Claire looked away quickly, focusing on helping Haley spread tomato sauce. She couldn't afford these kinds of thoughts. This job was her family's lifeline, nothing more. They assembled 4 pizzas, one for each person to customize. Dylan created an elaborate face with pepperoni and olives. Haley arranged hers into a flower pattern. Marcus's was precisely organized by topping type, which made Claire laugh. Hers ended up loaded with everything, a habit from years of making food stretch as far as possible. As the pizzas baked, filling the kitchen with the smell of yeast and melting cheese, Marcus opened a bottle of wine for the adults and poured juice for the children. They sat around the kitchen table, not the formal dining room Marcus usually used for entertaining, and for the first time since Claire had started working there, the mansion felt like a home. "Ms. Mitchell, where did you learn to cook like this?" Marcus asked, savoring his first bite. "Claire, please. Ms. Mitchell makes me feel like I'm in trouble." She took a sip of wine, surprised by its quality. "I went to culinary school, actually. 2 semesters before, She glanced at Haley, choosing her words carefully, before life took a different direction. You never finished? There was genuine curiosity in his voice. No judgment. Couldn't afford it, but I kept learning on my own, experimenting with recipes when I had time and ingredients. She shrugged. Cooking makes sense to me in a way most things don't. It's chemistry and creativity combined. And at the end, you've created something that nourishes people. There's satisfaction in that. Marcus studied her with that intense gaze she was beginning to recognize. What would you do if you could finish? If money wasn't an obstacle? The question caught her off guard. I used to dream about opening a restaurant. Nothing fancy. A neighborhood place where people felt welcome, where the food was excellent but not pretentious. Comfort food elevated, I guess. She laughed self-consciously. But that's just a fantasy. Reality is making rent and keeping Haley in good schools. Dreams don't have to stay fantasies. Marcus's voice was quiet but firm. I built sterling technologies from nothing because I refused to accept that my circumstances defined my possibilities. You also had advantages I don't. Education, connections, opportunities. I had none of those things initially. What I had was determination, and people who took chances on me when they didn't have to. He paused. My first investor was a diner owner who let me pitch my business plan while I washed dishes in his kitchen. He gave me $5,000 he couldn't afford to lose because he saw something in me beyond my circumstances. Claire felt something shift in her understanding of Marcus Sterling. The magazines painted him as a self-made billionaire, but they never mentioned diner kitchens or impossible risks taken by people who barely had anything themselves. The conversation flowed easier after that, touching on everything from Dylan's upcoming science fair project to Haley's obsession with dinosaurs to Marcus's disastrous attempt at learning to ski last winter. Claire found herself genuinely laughing. Not the polite laughter of an employee, but real amusement at Marcus's self-deprecating stories. After dinner, Dylan asked if Haley could stay to watch a movie. Claire checked her watch. It was already past both children's bedtimes, but the hopeful looks on their faces made her relent. One movie, then we have to go. Marcus surprised her by joining them, all four settling into the media room's plush seating. The children picked an animated adventure film, and within 20 minutes both had fallen asleep. Haley curled against Claire's side, Dylan's head on Marcus's shoulder. We should move them, Marcus whispered, but neither adult moved immediately, reluctant to break the peaceful moment. He doesn't usually fall asleep with me, Marcus said quietly, looking down at his son. He's always so guarded, like he's afraid to need me too much. Maybe he's afraid you'll disappear like his mother did. Claire spoke gently, recognizing the pain in both father and son. Haley went through something similar. Her dad left when I was 6 months pregnant, and for the longest time she wouldn't let me out of her sight. She was terrified I'd vanish too. How did you help her through it? Consistency. Showing up every single day, even when I was exhausted or overwhelmed. Eventually, she learned she could trust that I wasn't going anywhere. Claire adjusted Haley's position carefully. Children are resilient, but they need proof, not promises. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. His mother left when he was 3. Caroline couldn't handle the reality of motherhood, the sleepless nights, the constant needs, the way children reshape your entire existence. She wanted the Instagram version of family life, not the messy reality. His voice hardened. She moved to Europe with her tennis instructor. Sends birthday cards twice a year if Dylan's lucky. I'm sorry. That's incredibly painful for both of you. I thought providing everything material would be enough. Best schools, opportunities, experiences. But this week, watching him with you and Haley, Marcus trailed off. He's happier than I've seen him in years. You did that in 5 days. What does that say about me as a father? Claire turned to face him fully. It says you're human. It says you've been doing your best while carrying enormous responsibilities alone. But Marcus, she used his first name without thinking, the formality dropping away. Dylan doesn't need perfect. He needs present. He needs you to show up, even messily, even when you don't know what you're doing. Their eyes met in the dim light of the television screen, and something passed between them, understanding, connection, something deeper that made Claire's breath catch. Marcus reached out slowly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "Claire," he started, but the moment shattered when Dylan stirred, mumbling in his sleep. They both pulled back quickly, the spell broken. Claire stood, suddenly aware of how inappropriate this was becoming. "I should get Haley home. School tomorrow." Marcus nodded, his expression unreadable again, walls sliding back into place. "Of course. I'll help you get her to the car." As Claire drove home through quiet streets, Haley sleeping in the back seat, her mind spun with confusion. That moment in the media room, had she imagined the electricity between them? Was Marcus Sterling actually interested in her? Or was she projecting her own inappropriate feelings onto her employer? Either way, it was dangerous territory. She'd worked too hard, risked too much, to jeopardize this opportunity over some impossible attraction. Men like Marcus didn't end up with women like her, except in fairy tales, and Claire had stopped believing in those years ago. What Claire didn't know was that Marcus sat in his study until 3 a.m, staring at financial reports without seeing them, his mind replaying every interaction with the woman who'd walked into his life and somehow made him feel things he'd carefully locked away for years. He'd built an empire by maintaining control, by never letting emotion compromise logic. But Claire Mitchell, with her borrowed blazer and fierce determination, and the way she looked at him like he was just a person instead of a bank account, had him questioning everything. And across town, in a small apartment, a very different kind of storm was brewing. Derek Mitchell sat in a dingy bar, scrolling through his ex-wife's social media, or rather, her neighbor's posts that mentioned her. He'd heard through mutual acquaintances that Claire was working for Marcus Sterling now, living in that mansion several days a week with their daughter. Derek drained his beer and smiled coldly. He'd burned through the money from his last scam and needed a new score. And if his pathetic ex-wife had somehow landed a position with a billionaire, well, that was an opportunity he intended to exploit. She'd left him, taken his daughter, made him look like a failure to everyone they knew. Time to remind Claire Mitchell that some debts never got paid off. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Yeah, it's me. Remember that favor you owed me? I need information on Marcus Sterling, security, habits, vulnerabilities, and I need to know everything about his relationship with my ex-wife." He listened for a moment, then laughed. "Trust me, this is going to pay off big, really big." As Derek plotted in the shadows, neither Claire nor Marcus had any idea that their carefully rebuilt lives were about to collide with a past that refused to stay buried. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm that felt almost too good to be real. Claire had settled into her role with surprising ease, managing Marcus's complex schedule while creating a warmth in the Sterling household that had been absent for years. Dylan and Haley had become inseparable, and Claire found herself staying later each evening, sharing dinners with Marcus after the children went to bed, conversations stretching into hours about everything from business philosophy to childhood dreams. The attraction between them had grown harder to ignore. Marcus found excuses to brush past her in doorways, their eyes meeting with increasing frequency across rooms. Claire caught herself dressing more carefully in the mornings, applying lipstick she hadn't worn in years. They were dancing around something neither dared name, professionalism the only barrier keeping them from crossing a line that would change everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything unraveled. Claire was coordinating a business dinner for that evening when Patricia appeared in her office doorway, face pale. "There's a man at the gate claiming to be your husband. Security won't let him in, but he's causing a scene." Claire's blood turned to ice. Ex-husband. And he shouldn't know this address. She rushed to the security office where monitors showed Derek pacing outside the gate, agitated and clearly intoxicated even in the afternoon. He was shouting at the camera, his face twisted with anger she remembered too well from their marriage. "Let me talk to him," Claire said quietly. "Maybe I can get him to leave." The security guard activated the intercom. Derek's voice crackled through, slurred and aggressive. "There she is, living in luxury while I'm struggling. That's my daughter in there, Claire. You can't keep her from me. You gave up rights to see Haley when you abandoned us," Claire said, keeping her voice steady despite her shaking hands. "You need to leave, Derek. Now, or what? Your billionaire boyfriend will have me arrested." Derek laughed bitterly. "Yeah, I know all about Marcus Sterling. Must be nice, landing on your feet like that. From diner waitress to mansion in a few weeks. Makes a guy wonder what you're doing to earn that paycheck. The insinuation made Claire's stomach turn. You're drunk. Go home before you do something you'll regret. I'm not going anywhere until we talk about my daughter. And about the money you owe me. I don't owe you anything. You took everything when you left. My pride, my reputation, my kid. Time to pay up, Claire. I'm thinking your new boss would be very interested to know about your past. About how you drove me to gambling because you were so cold, so demanding. That's enough. Marcus's voice cut through Derek's rant like a blade. He'd appeared beside Claire, his expression carved from ice. Mr. Mitchell, you have 10 seconds to leave this property, or I'll have you arrested for trespassing and harassment. The restraining order will be filed within the hour. Derek's eyes widened, then narrowed with calculation. So it's like that, huh? You think you can just take my family and... The family you abandoned? Marcus's tone could have frozen lava. The woman you left pregnant and penniless? The daughter you've never paid a cent to support? That family? He stepped closer to the camera. I've already had my lawyers research your background, Mr. Mitchell. 3 arrests for fraud, outstanding warrants in 2 states, and a gambling problem that cost your wife her savings. You have nothing here. No rights, no claim, no leverage. Leave now, or I'll make sure every scheme you've ever run gets investigated thoroughly. The color drained from Derek's face. After a long moment, he backed away from the gate, pointing at the camera. This isn't over, Claire. You can't hide behind him forever. But his voice lacked conviction now, and he stumbled toward a beat-up car parked down the street. Claire watched him drive away, her whole body trembling with reaction. I'm so sorry. I don't know how he found out where I work. I never told anyone. It's not your fault. Marcus turned to her, his expression softening. Are you all right? I need to pick up Haley from school early. If he knows where I work, he might know where she goes to school. Panic edged into her voice. I need to make sure she's safe. I'll come with you. Security will follow in a second car. Marcus was already moving, making calls, his protective instincts fully engaged. Patricia, cancel my afternoon meetings. Get our lawyers on the phone. I want a restraining order filed immediately and private security assigned to Claire and Haley until the situation is resolved. In the car, Claire couldn't stop shaking. You've done background checks on me? The question came out smaller than she intended. Marcus glanced at her. Standard procedure for anyone working in my home. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, but Claire, there was nothing in your background that concerned me. A difficult marriage to an unstable man, financial hardship, a custody situation that was entirely in your favor because you were the only parent who showed up. None of that reflects poorly on you. He'll try to make trouble. Derek always does when he needs money. He'll tell lies, make accusations. Let him try. Marcus's voice was steel. I have resources he can't imagine. If he comes near you or Haley again, I'll bury him in legal action so comprehensive he'll wish he'd never heard the name Sterling. They reached Haley's school to find her safe, playing on the playground, oblivious to the drama. Claire pulled her daughter close, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo, grounding herself in what mattered. That evening, after Haley was settled in one of the mansion's guest rooms, Marcus had insisted they stay at the estate until Derek's threat was neutralized. Claire found Marcus in his study, staring out the window at the city lights below. Thank you, she said quietly from the doorway, for everything today, for protecting us. Marcus turned and the expression on his face stole her breath. Claire, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without interrupting. He crossed to her slowly. These past few weeks have been the best I've had in years. Coming home knowing you'll be here. Watching Dylan laugh again. Sharing dinners and conversations that remind me there's life beyond balance sheets and board meetings. You've changed everything. Marcus, I know this is complicated. I'm your employer. There are power dynamics, professional boundaries we shouldn't cross. But I can't keep pretending I don't feel what I feel. He stopped inches from her, close enough that she could see gold flecks in his gray eyes. I'm falling for you, Claire. Have been since you slipped on that hallway floor and looked at me like I was just another person. Not a bank account or a business opportunity. You see me, the real me, and somehow you haven't run away. Claire's heart hammered against her ribs. I'm a single mother with a messy past and an ex-husband who shows up drunk making threats. You're Marcus Sterling. This doesn't make sense. Since when does love make sense? He reached up, cradling her face in his hands. I don't care about the differences in our bank accounts or social status. I care that you make Dylan laugh, that you challenge me when I'm wrong, that you turn this mausoleum into a home. I care that when I imagine my future now, you're in it. You and Haley, dinners together, silly pizza nights, all of it. This could ruin everything, Claire whispered, but she was leaning into his touch. If this doesn't work out, I lose my job, my security, Haley's stability. Then we'll make sure it works out. Marcus smiled, that rare, transformative expression that made him look years younger. I didn't build an empire by playing it safe, Claire. I built it by recognizing what was valuable and fighting to keep it. And you're the most valuable thing that's walked into my life. I'm scared, she admitted, of this, of what it means, of how fast it's happening. So am I. Terrified, actually. But I'm more afraid of letting you slip away because I was too much of a coward to take a chance. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her lips. Tell me to stop and I will. Tell me this crosses too many lines and we'll go back to just employer and assistant. But Claire, please don't tell me to stop. She answered by closing the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that felt like coming home and jumping off a cliff simultaneously. Marcus pulled her closer, one hand tangling in her hair, the other at her waist, and Claire let herself fall into it, into him, into the impossible possibility that maybe fairy tales could happen to people like her. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. I'm doing this properly. Dating, courting, whatever terminology people use now. I want Dylan and Haley to see us building something real, not rushing into anything that might scare them. Agreed, slow and steady. Claire smiled. Though I should probably tell you, Haley's been planning our wedding since the pizza night. She's got very specific ideas about flowers. Marcus laughed, the sound rich and genuine. Dylan asked me last week if I thought you were pretty. When I said yes, he informed me I should do something about it, before I died, alone and sad. He kissed her again, softer this time. Smart kid. The next 6 months unfolded like a dream Claire kept waiting to wake from. Derek's threats evaporated once Marcus's lawyers got involved. Turned out facing actual legal consequences had a sobering effect. The restraining order was granted, and Derek slunk back to whatever hole he'd emerged from. Marcus was true to his word about dating properly. Dinners out, movies, long walks in the park while Dylan and Haley ran ahead laughing. He attended Haley's school play and taught Dylan to ride a bike. Claire finished her culinary degree, paid for by Marcus despite her protests, attending evening classes while he managed the children. The household staff adjusted to the new dynamic with varying degrees of approval. Patricia remained stern, but Claire caught her smiling more frequently. The chef, initially territorial, became Claire's greatest champion after she demonstrated a soufflé technique he'd been struggling with for years. On a spring evening almost exactly a year after that first meeting in the hallway, Marcus took Claire to the diner where she'd worked. Murphy's had closed for a private event, which turned out to be their closest friends and family gathered for an engagement party. You orchestrated this with Murphy? Claire asked, stunned as people applauded. He was surprisingly enthusiastic. Said he always knew you'd end up somewhere better. Marcus pulled out a ring box, dropping to one knee right there in the diner booth, where she'd served him coffee countless times, without realizing her future was sitting across from her. Claire Mitchell, you walked into my life when I'd forgotten what joy felt like. You brought light to my son's eyes, and purpose to my days. You showed me that success isn't measured in dollars, but in moments. Pizza nights, and terrible jokes and children's laughter. Marry me. Build a life with me. Let's make this beautiful chaos permanent. Through tears, Claire managed, I don't have much to offer, sir, but I can cook. Marcus grinned. Lucky for both of us, I can provide the kitchen. Is that a yes? That's a yes. The wedding was held 6 months later in the mansion's gardens, intimate and perfect. Dylan served as best man with heartbreaking seriousness, while Haley scattered flower petals with theatrical flair. Murphy walked Claire down the aisle, and Mrs. Chen cried in the front row. During the reception, as Claire danced with her new husband under string lights while their children played with other kids on the lawn, she thought about that morning in the Sterling Tower hallway. How close she'd come to giving up, to accepting that survival was the best she could hope for. "What are you thinking?" Marcus murmured against her hair. "That I'm the luckiest person alive. That sometimes the best things come from the worst moments." She pulled back to look at him. "That cleaning solution spill changed my entire life. Mine too." He kissed her softly. "Though for the record, I was planning to offer you a position anyway. The spill just accelerated my timeline." "You were not." "I absolutely was. I'd been watching you for weeks, trying to figure out how to approach you without seeming like a creep." Marcus spun her gently. "You were dedicated, thorough, kind to people everyone else ignored. I knew you were special long before we officially met." Claire laughed, joy bubbling up irrepressibly. "So what you're saying is, you were stalking me?" "Strategically observing. Very different." He pulled her close again. "And look how well it worked out." Years later, when people asked how they met, Marcus would tell the story of the woman who fell in his hallway and changed his life. Claire would add that she'd been falling toward him long before that moment, falling through exhaustion and hardship and hope that refused to die, falling toward a future she never could have imagined, but somehow always deserved. They opened a restaurant together eventually. Claire's dream realized, combining her culinary expertise with Marcus's business acumen. A neighborhood place called Second Chances, where the food was exceptional and the atmosphere welcoming, where people from all walks of life gathered around tables and remembered that humanity's best moments happen over shared meals. Dylan grew up to study architecture, designing affordable housing for single parents. Haley became a teacher, working with underprivileged children. Both credited their parents' example, that kindness matters more than status, that showing up matters more than perfection, and that families are built not from perfection, but from people who choose each other every single day. And every Friday night, without fail, the Sterling family gathered in their kitchen to make pizza from scratch, laughing and arguing over toppings and creating memories more valuable than any fortune. Because Claire had been right that first night. Sometimes the most precious things we offer aren't grand gestures or material wealth, but simple gifts, a home-cooked meal, genuine presence, and love that shows up consistently, even in the messy, imperfect, beautiful chaos of real life.